Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
Thank you, David Lee, once again. We are off and running episode 14 now. 14 of Inside the Arena. A lot going on off the ice, off the court, off the field of play. This time of year in particular, from the Dogs and the Cougs to the Kraken to the Mariners, the Sounders, and yes, the Sonics, Niko.
This is my favorite time of the year in Seattle sports because you have all those teams, and whether it's the anticipation building for what might be in football or on the hockey ring, or talking about playoff races for the Sounders, the Mariners, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get into that, and we'll talk more, as always, in our Supersonic Minute, but there's some interest this week. One of the first families of Seattle basketball, the Watts family. You talked with Donald Watts, of course. Great family with his dad, Slick, and his son, Isaiah.
Yeah, it's amazing. First of all, if you want to look at it from a pure basketball perspective, that Slick was this NBA star. We know Donald is a Dog, and his son is a Coug, which is a unique dynamic, but they have that much talent. But then you actually get to know them. Great people, and quite a story of adversity that they're fighting through that we're going to bring everybody in just a couple minutes.
And I've heard Donald Watts, the Husky, say go Cougs now on multiple occasions. So
he is talking about how joyful it is to do that, at the same time painful. But
first, Four Corners. Something we do every week. We talk about the good and the bad in the world of sports, particularly away from the action. So let's start, Niko. What do you like? What's good this week away from the field?
Football's back. But you said away from the field. But what I want to really dive into is, okay, when you say football's back, we can talk about the Seahawks open up, Broncos bringing back those throwback uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I really like, because that's marketing genius. And that's not a knock on the uniforms that they wear on a regular basis, which are certainly something that will always be associated with the Super Bowl win and the most successful era of the franchise. But there's something about those 90s looks. I mean, they're just so clean. And to bring it back against the Broncos.
Yeah.
With the look that's associated with the 90s and the rivalry of the AFC West, kudos, bravo, whatever positive term you want to use. Now, the Seahawks are going to win that game if you want my X's and O's perspective on it. But off the field, my goodness, marketing genius. Those things are so clean. They're so beautiful. I remember when they wore them against the Browns last year, and I was just on the sidelines taking so many pictures. It's like, okay, we've seen this before, but it's like, oh my God, they're beautiful.
I think the blue pops now. Yeah. The old one did. And the Broncos had some nice throwbacks too. This really, anytime you see an update to a uniform, a branding update, there's money involved. We've never seen these numbers on how many they've actually sold. But if you walk through the team store, you see how many throwback uniforms, those old blues that they're selling now. Bosworth, you can buy a Bosworth 55 old Seahawks uniform. We have seen this with the Sounders now refreshing their branding. There's a lot of new merchandise you can sell with a new logo.
Yes, and with that one in particular, fans were clamoring to see that Seahawks throwback for years, and now they finally have it. And I oftentimes when you see a new uniform or a throwback like that, it can be disappointing. This is not disappointing. This is they nailed it.
You know what else was not disappointing this week?
What was not?
How do you like that for a segue? The Cougs and the Huskies both winning. The Cougs, of course, on the CW for free. We can talk, as we did last week, about the fact that the Huskies were blacked out on Comcast, but the Cougs were available to everybody nationwide on the CW, including our sister station at KOMO, KUNS, for free. And we can report, at least here in Seattle, the Cougs had a 10 share of the Seattle market for the WSU Portland State game. That was actually better than the ratings for Miami and Florida, which was on KOMO here in Seattle. So we're still waiting on the full picture nationwide. This was all about exposure for the Cougs, and every one of those games matter. If you're a Coug fan and you want to see this university end up in another conference down the road, this was a bit of a blowout. Didn't necessarily look great from the drone that they had in the sky in the second half when it was such a blowout and the Cougs were up by 40 points. That wasn't so great, but in terms of ratings in the Seattle market, which you and I have talked about. The Cougs are a Seattle team, and in Portland as well. It was good for the future of Washington State University.
Yeah, that number is a very good number, and you put it in comparison to a marquee matchup over the weekend. But in addition to that, when you're talking about the really difficult situation for the Cougs, landing a nationwide deal like that for them in Oregon State, that's huge. And the number here proves it. And I suspect with some of the other games down the road, it'll be similar, maybe even better if the Cougs can string a few wins together and, dare I say, win the Apple Cup. I think it's going to be a really close game in the Apple Cup. I wouldn't bet either way on that if I were a betting man. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to monitor all year. And what a best case scenario to come out of a really difficult setup.
Okay. So with that said, let's talk about what we don't like as we take it home. I had to use the crickets at some point.
Why not?
So what don't you like?
Speaking of the Cougs.
Yeah.
I like the setup this year with the scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, where Mountain West schools play 7 league teams +1, the +1 being either the Cougs or Oregon State. I think that's a really unique thing, and it stops short of a merger, if you will, things like that. But now we're getting news that the Mountain West will not renew that agreement for 2025, and I think that's a mistake. There's some good programs in the Mountain West, and this is not to discredit them, but inevitably, the Cougs and Oregon State both have more cachet than most schools, if not all of them. And so this idea that you're going to kind of plug your nose, and I get it, like this is not just that. It's money. It's all these things in their eyes. Well, maybe we don't need these schools. You're the Mountain West. You're not the SEC. Yeah. What are you doing? And so my hope is, and I still firmly believe that the Cougs are going to be in a different league in 2 years and maybe even a different league from that 5 years down the line. Okay. I don't think this Pac-2 thing, as much as they're keeping the legacy alive, lives beyond the NCAA 2-year window where they can collect all those monies. Not because of a failure of things, but I think eventually a Big 12 comes calling, or a depleted ACC gives Stanford and Cal some traveling partners. So watch that. But what is the Mountain West doing? That's adding those two schools, not adding them, but keeping association with those two schools is your closest you're going to get to the power level, perhaps ever.
Well, the uncertainty, to your point, is not great for anybody.
No.
It's not great for the future relations of say, those Mountain West schools with Washington State and Oregon State, who we know financially want to keep the Pac-12 logo and keep the Pac-12 studio alive. There's financially a lot for them to benefit from. But I'm going to actually, Niko, I'm going to push back. One of the better stories that I've seen written about this in the last few days actually came from, and I'll give him a shout out, Michael Preston on Cougs Center, who said, who wrote a piece, and you can read it in full. The Pac-12 isn't extending their scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, so what now? He makes the argument that that was a bad deal for Washington State and Oregon State, that the Mountain West agreed to 12 games for $14 million in 2024. Gave Washington State and Oregon State the bottom half of the conference. Because remember, the Cougs and the Beavers wanted to host games, needed people to come to the stadium, needed to sell those games. So the Mountain West said, okay, we'll end our year with Wyoming in Pullman. And the Saturday after Thanksgiving, when we know nobody's going to be in Pullman. That's not going to be a great TV game. It's not going to be a great matchup, no matter what's happening with those two teams at the end of the year. There's no home games with Boise State for either school. Fresno State, UNLV, not included. So he writes, and I actually think this is a decent take. He says, this brings us to what's probably happening now, because I doubt this is one big bluff to save a few $million, that they're working on a schedule with the ACC or the Big 12. So Preston writes that he's citing the Oregon State athletic director, saying there are other potential relationships that we're exploring and trying to finalize, and thinks we'll have something put to bed soon. He notes the ACC has Cal and Stanford, as you and I both know. They have non-conference openings next year. The schools also share a television partner in the CW. ACC games also on the CW here in Seattle. So he makes the argument that what is happening right now with all of this uncertainty with the ACC and the Big 12 and the Big 10 is that Washington State and Oregon State are working on a partial ACC schedule, which is exponentially more appealing to both Pac-12 schools than traveling to Fresno or Albuquerque.
And to that point, first of all, it's a great take. I want to give you two additions to that. So the Cougs and Bees are good enough for the ACC, but not the Mountain West, which is silly, right?
Yeah.
And let's make a little news here. I've been in recent weeks had sources telling me, as you remember, I worked out on the East Coast for a long time, that the ACC was at least quote unquote looking at Washington State and Oregon State. Now that's all I got. And from the abstract, I was like, well, maybe they're looking to add, because we keep hearing the rumblings about a Clemson and Florida State, potentially other schools leaving. So that's what I thought it was. This is much more practical if that were to come to fruition, because here's the deal. Those big hitters in the ACC, Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina, they want nothing to do with Stanford and Cal. And this is a way to, Stanford and Cal aren't even taking any money from that TV contract in the ACC. This is a way to get them maybe a little bit of money, get them games against schools they're familiar with, and mitigate the travel that your Eastern Atlantic Coast League will have to make to the Pacific Coast.
Well, I think all of this is plausible. We will see here in the days and weeks to come. We're going to talk about it at length here on Inside the Arena. I want to quickly say on the negative side, as we bring this to a close with the Four Corners, I haven't mentioned this, but the Sounders are getting a lot of backlash from season ticket holders as they go through this process right now for season ticket renewals.
Yep.
A lot of complaints online. People saying they're getting raises or asked for raises of anywhere between 12 and 20%, depending on where they are in Lumen Field and how long they've been a season ticket holder. It's curious why the Sounders are doing that right now and not a few years ago, before the pandemic, when they were one of the hottest tickets in town. Attendance has been down this year, as you and I both know, and now they're asking for more money. I'm only going to speculate at this point. Perhaps that has something to do with the FIFA Club World Cup coming to Seattle in 2025, and perhaps a game or two from that being part of the season ticket package. Also, the Sounders invested heavily down in Renton on their new facility, but that's also a negative. It's going to be curious to see how many people don't re-up on their season tickets.
Yeah, and if you're hosting Club World Cup games, we saw how fun that was in 22, right? That would justify an increase, but that's, again, as you mentioned, speculation.
All right, let's not speculate. Let's talk about facts versus fiction in the Supersonic Minute. We are talking about this every week as we potentially get closer and closer to some sort of expansion announcement. There is litigation. For those of you who have not been listening the last few weeks, litigation right now between the NBA and Warner Brothers Discovery over the TV digital rights deal that was negotiated and finalized, according to the NBA, with Amazon and NBC and ESPN, ABC. Warner Brothers Discovery is still trying to get a piece of that pie. Looks like it's headed to an ugly divorce. We're waiting on that. Again, according to Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, before they start talking about expansion, there's been litigation that potentially could be resolved in October. So we're waiting on that. And you know what? Who else is rooting for a Sonics return?
Who's that?
The Watts family.
Oh, the first basketball family, right? And
yes.
We talked about them a minute ago. And Seattle basketball fans know them and love them. But before we talk about them a little bit longer, our dear friend Eric Johnson did a really great piece about this family, everything they fought through a basketball life. Let's take a look, a little bit of a snippet from what our buddy Eric did.
Time is a mirage, a shapeless ghost. If you didn't know better, you'd swear it was just yesterday, and yet somehow it seems so long ago.
Sonics entered the 1973-74 season with a lot of expectation and hope. And there was a rookie guard who would soon make an impact in the league and with Sonic fans.
Hello, Slick. How are you, buddy? Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Here's Watson, a change of base drive, shoots one of the base. It goes! I cannot believe that shot. Oh, this crowd is crazy. Slick Watson gets his hands on the ball and they go nutty.
We were just reminiscing about you playing one-on-one in the driveway with Dawn and cheating. You were a cheating son of a gun.
Ready to go. Here they go. Walt tips the ball.
You hanging in there, buddy? Yeah? Good to see you.
First of all, we love Eric Johnson, but we also love Slick Watts. And so you see Slick there, and he's recovering from a stroke. And then Donald kind of shouldering a lot of the care, Donald being his son, he suffered a stroke. late last year. So it's been a real battle for this family, a basketball family. So we're talking about all that, what Donald is still doing in our community, what the Sonics Legends Fund is doing for this family. That's a great organization. And of course, we're talking about the potential return of the Sonics. Let's talk about and take a look at my conversation with Donald Watts. Well, first of all, Donald, thanks so much for the time. We got a lot to get to in this conversation, but let's just start with the logo I see in the t-shirt there. You know, Watts basketball, everything that you get. There it is. I love it. What's going on with you this summer? How are you getting ready for, boy, oh boy, not that I want to fast forward to the last few days of summer here, but how are you getting ready for the basketball season coming up?
Oh man, I mean, always it's getting ready for basketball season is what I like. It's like in my DNA, right? We're like seasonal people, and I haven't played a season myself in a long time. But I always 3-4 months into the season, I start exercising a little more. I have to slow myself down and say, wait a minute, you're not getting ready for anything. You're old. You're getting the kids ready for stuff. And so it's that time of the year, and it's especially special for me this year with all that I've been through, all that my dad's been through. Christmas Day, having a stroke, not being able to walk, not knowing if I'd be able to get out here and compete and get on the floor and work with kids. And a couple months ago, I got my first dunk in. That felt like a kid, like it was like my first time dunking. Didn't know if I'd ever be able to do that again. So I'm just really excited to have the ability to get out here and help these kids prepare. And I'm more passionate about helping them prepare better than I ever have before with high school basketball right around the corner, college basketball. The guys we worked with this summer will be kicking off doing their thing. So I'm just super excited for the upcoming basketball season and excited to help kids prepare right now.
What does it mean to you that you are able to get these kids ready, that there is that support in the community, that everybody loves you and your dad, and given unfortunate circumstances, though, you've seen that love probably more than ever, I imagine, just what it's been like to see that love and your and your dad's journey, both trying to fight back from from something so super serious like a stroke.
Yeah, I know that I've always known that I was fortunate growing up. First to have my father, a father, not just because he's Slick Watts, but the way that he cares, the way that he loves, the passion that he has for me as a person, but also for people in the community. And so when he goes through what he goes through, or I go through what I go through, that equity of all the people, how many people before I had my stroke, you just came up to me, how's your dad doing? They don't even say, hi, Donald. It's, how's your dad doing? And you would think that would be annoying, but it's not. And then so many people say, yeah, your dad was my teacher. He saved my life. Your dad was this. Your dad was my hero growing up. Your dad, so like that, like it feels really good, but it also lets you know that you have a network of support to help out. And then you have people like Sandy Gregory over at the Sonics Legends Fund who've stepped up to help when things were real difficult and we were fighting legal battles, and the community stepping up through that vehicle has been huge for me, being able to support him. So, and all of that just dials back to who he is, and then who we are as people, who he instilled in me, and my son and my kids are doing the same thing, giving back to kids. And it just, I don't know, man, like sometimes this world can feel pretty crazy. But when communities come together, not only support us, but just support people in general, it just gives you a good, humble feeling, and a feeling that, you know what, the world's going to be all right. There's some great people in the world, and try to connect with as many of those people as you can, and your life will be as good as it can be.
Can I just be one more person to say, hey, Donald, how's your dad doing?
yeah, for sure. He's doing well. We got some stuff we got to work on. He fell, right, not this Christmas, but not this Thanksgiving, but the day before Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and he had a hip replacement. And he was doing great, like coming back from that hip replacement. I came home one night late in the morning. He had got himself up out of bed and got the chicken out the refrigerator. I was like 2 a.m. I'm like, what's going on? I see chicken scooting across the floor, and he's hitting it with his walker like a hockey puck. I'm like, man, get back in bed. But he was doing really well. But the bone grew back around the implant, And so it's limiting his mobility, and we're not able to get out and do as much of the stuff as we want to do. And that's something that we got to get him into and get his hip fixed so we can get back on. He's doing great, but I want more social activity for him. He's a social guy. And although he can't necessarily speak, he says he can't say a lot. He says a lot with his eyes. He says a lot with the few words that he does say that I'm not going to mention on here because they're mostly 4-letter words and mostly directed at me. But no, I just want to get him out and have the fun that we were having before, karaoke and some of those things that we were doing, starting having some more people around the house barbecuing and stuff like that to just keep them motivated to keep fighting.
And keeping fighting, that's what you've done. You're taking care of Dad, and then you have your stroke. And, share with me what it's been like to fight back from that, and what it's been like, how much it's motivated you to fight back in the way you have. When I say motivation from the standpoint, not just taking care of Dad, which is paramount, but, being there for your children, but also, yes, your actual children, but those children on the court that you help out immensely. How much did all of that motivate you to be this guy I'm looking at today that if I didn't know already, I would have never guessed that something like that happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the moment it happened, and like I got in the ambulance. You put me in the ambulance, and I'm laying on the gurney or whatever, and I look up at the guy, and I'm like, "Hey, man, am I gonna be all right?" And he's like, I think so. I can't tell you that. We got to get you to the hospital." And my next thought was because I was like, people are dependent on me, man. I was like, I gotta be all right. People are dependent on me, and that's been a motivating factor for me for sure. The challenge, when I was struggling coming back, walking and doing the physical stuff, that was kind of the easy part, right? Like, here's a challenge, right? Like, attack it, like you know how to attack it. When you're tired, rest. People see you, they know something's not quite right because you're not walking normal or your arm's stuck or whatever. And so that was kind of a like, just attack. And then I didn't pay attention to other responsibilities because I knew I had to do this. The challenges come kind of now that I'm back on my feet, and I still have some unseen challenges, right? Like I can't, I have to really, really, really be focused on one thing at a time. And another thing will take my attention off of it. And then I can't even get back to it or find it. And like people even close to you, I guess I'm so far away from that guy who couldn't walk. I'm dunking again, like I'm so that the people who are close to you and love you most, they don't realize that you still can't handle everything you could handle before because physically you're not dealing with any challenges. I'm riding in the car with my mom and it was frustrating about a month or whatever. And then one day she went to talk to me and she said, "Are you doing something right now?" And I was like, "Oh, she figured it out. Like, I can't just have like I'm over here working on trying to keep the lights on and the bills on, and I can't just have a regular conversation." And so that's the tough part. The tough part is, running a business where you were managing people, and now you really, you were holding people's hands to get things done, and now you need people holding your hands to get things done, and people are coming to you for things. It's like, like I can't do all that, but. At the same time, I've tried to, I've depended on my athleticism. The same thing I teach kids. It's like, what do you have? And then how do you put yourself in the best position to be successful with what you're working with? And so I started taking 2 to 3 days a week where I would just go and do the administrative stuff, where I had no physical, no social, responsibilities, nothing, where all I had to focus on, the only thing I could focus on was like, okay, I need to dot these I's and cross these T's so that we can keep the lights on. And it's been a delicate balance. It's not working as well as I'd like, but whose job is working as well as anybody would like it to do? Just trying to keep the bill monster off my back.
Yeah, absolutely on that. And I appreciate you sharing that with me because again, you and I've gotten close in my just a few years here in Seattle, and I know I wasn't the only one that was just floored by that, but also just as happy to see you like this right now and see on the road to recovery as you are. It is a blessing to see that, no question. I do want to talk about, I want to throw 2 words at you: basketball in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
How special are they? What do they mean to you? I'm not trying to be cliche with like the quick question like that, but both the community support, what the game means to you. So many people loved watching your dad. They loved watching you. They love
Right.
watching your son at WSU and everything too. So like basketball in Seattle, what does it mean to you?
I mean, it's me. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm it. Like, that's what it means to me. It's so much a fabric of who I am, of what my upbringing was, of how I was born. I was born on your radio, on your TV station. You know, like it's such a fabric of like everything that I am, and the community is just, you know, I mean, it's like I don't want to say like it's all I know, but it's all I know, and it's not basketball. Like I'm not saying, oh, it's all I know. Basketball is all I know. It's like, no, the basketball community. You know, the Lenny Wilkins is just a phenomenal human being. That's like one of my favorite people ever. And he's the guy who traded my father away. You know what I mean? so I like little, you know, full transparency. My dad can't say nothing but to cuss me out once or twice. So I can speak this right now. He can't come up here and whoop me or nothing. But growing up, you know, there was like this kind of little disdain for Lenny, you know, Lenny this and Lenny don't like us and, you know, whatever. And then, you know, you're a teenager and you get around him. We all see him at the All-Star games, and there was a little bit of, you know, friction, weirdness or whatever. And then you grow up and you get around him more and more and more. And then, you know, I'm looking at Dad like, yo, this dude is tight. I don't know what you're talking about. And then he's full of love for him, you know, he's full of love for my dad, full of love for me. And whatever that relationship was when I was a baby is completely, totally repaired. And you know, they're you know, kind of peas in a pod to a sense of just pillars in this basketball community. Both men who have done so much for it and so appreciative for each other. You know, Fred Brown was my first select coach. You know what I mean? My dad was my rec coach. Then Fred Brown's your select coach. You know what I mean? And then my dad, we did some AAU stuff together. And it was just, I don't know, man. Benoit Benjamin, you know, sponsored my high school AAU trips and stuff. You know, it's just like, I'm pulling out names. But, you know, I got Xavier McDaniels Jr. is joining our staff at Watts Basketball. Oh. So, you know, when you say Seattle basketball and, you know, it's like I feel completely tethered to it from the older generation to the younger generation, Jamal Crawford and Isaiah Thomas. And those guys aren't even young anymore. So that tells you how old I am. But there's just a connectedness and a tetheredness to an absolute, like, beautiful community that is Seattle baskell.
No, that was beautiful. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing Maul throw up a shot like he does. As smooth as that shot is, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not too beautiful when you're standing in front of him trying to stop it.
Right?
And I've been there a couple times.
Oh my goodness. Hey, your dad started the headband, right?
Yeah.
Like he was the first, right?
He was one of the first. He says he's not old enough to be the first. He's the one who made it look good.
I love it. And he did make it look good. I actually, local card shop, saw Slick Watt's autograph and they're like, dude, I got to pick that up. It's the headband. It's Slick. It's my guy.
Tilted to the side. Yeah.
Perfection. Hey, I do want to talk to you about, you mentioned that basketball community and how special it is. And you know better than anybody. First of all, how much they've embraced your family from the standpoint. And what a great position for you. Obviously watching your dad. Now you get to watch your son, who was so darn fun to watch. I was the one yelling at the TV when he hit that clutch three in the tournament. I know it didn't work out in the end, but my wife was like, what are you yelling? I'm like, that's Isaiah. You know, it's so cool. But first of all, how special it is for you to be able to watch your dad, now be able to watch your son, and at the same time have that basketball community. You mentioned Sandy Gregory and the Sonics Legend Fund, what they do. I know I just asked like 3 questions in one. Yeah. But let's start with how special it is for you to be able to watch your dad and learn from him, and then see all of that show up in your son and be the amazing player that he is. And you have the community support you guys all along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, watching Pops growing up, like I was a kid, so I don't remember too much watching him play. I do remember some of the experiences being in the arena. I do remember when he left and we stayed here. him being gone, right, when he was in Houston, being gone for stretches of time. But, like more than remembering watching him play, I heard a lot about how he played and mostly from him. You know what I mean? I was a bad boy. I'll shut Jordan down. I'll shut Jordan down. And I said, oh, you probably would shut Jordan down, but not Jordan. That's the bootleg shoes. You got the guy in the LA Gears. Yeah, you would shut him down, but not the dude. Not like Mike. Now we talked, plenty of trash. He talked plenty of trash about how he played. But then you have people who, like I said, would come up to you and say, "Hey, man, your pops is my hero. The way he played, passion, that he played with, the way he uplifted others, really inspired me." And then you hear, people who then he impacted with his life in the community and stuff like that. So it's just incredible. And then my son, he was committed to going to Seton Hall. When he was going through that recruiting process, I made it very clear to him. He went to South Kent, and I made it very clear to him, all the schools were recruiting. I was like, hey, man, don't choose a school. This college basketball stuff is difficult. And I want you to pick what's right for you. Don't pick something based on family or us being close we'll figure out how to get there. And so it's an original, commitment was to Seton Hall. He got hurt. They kind of were wishy-washy on that deal with the commitment. And when he opened his commitment up, Coach Kyle Smith went out there and said, hey, what do we got to do to get you there? And he just said, send me the paperwork, And so I think that time away from home and, was enough for him to say, no, I want to get back. And I'm glad he did. I'm over in Pullman, like as often as I can be. And I'll say this too. And so people I went out the only old dog saying go Cougs, right? So that's some powerful stuff. When Isaiah I got Husky fans like, hey, I was rooting for him too. They probably won't be honest about it, especially this week, with the Apple Cup, whatever you want to call it now.
Right.
Coming up. But no, it's super exciting. And one of the things I would, in our journey, in our process, I'm not a big AAU guy. It's changed a lot. It's when we played AAU, there were a couple teams and it was really just the top players. Now it's become closer to recreation, like high paid recreation basketball in a lot of situations. And we didn't force that thing. And I had told him, I said, hey man, before I'm ever going to sit in the gym with you all weekend, this is going to be you're going to love this more than anything else. If you play video games all day, we're not signing up for that. And, when he was in 3rd and 4th grade, they'd go to Port, like other people would go. I'm like, I'm not driving to Portland to watch an 8-year-old play basketball. You can get out in the backyard. You can go to the playground. You can go to the Washington Athletic Club, go get your work in, but I'm not following you around doing that. When you're ready and this is what you want to do, then we'll start doing that. And it's funny because I would, I'm like, I'm not going to go watch you sit on the bench or whatever. He's over in Pullman. I went to 5 games this year that he didn't get a minute in, and I driving 10 hours round trip, but happy to do it on that end of the spectrum. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm not, you're not there was one game we were at the Rotary Boys and Girls Club at the in-house league, and we were playing with a team, and our upbringings were similar at this point. We hadn't won a game. And we're in a game and we're down 1. I'm coaching them. We're down 1 and he gets a steal to go get a layup to put us up 1 with like a minute left. And he goes and he jump stops. He's like in 2nd or 3rd grade. And then he goes to do a 360 layup. And the guy behind him fouled him because he wasn't anticipating that he would be trying to do a 360. And I'm on the bench like, what are you doing? And then I said, well, you're gonna do a 3. And he looked at me and smiled and laughed, and I laughed it off. And then I said to myself and him at that time, I said, yeah. I said, if I had paid for a hotel room and this was the 5th game of the weekend and you did that same thing, we probably wouldn't talk for a month. So just a message for that's why it's important for parents not to go overboard with this youth sports stuff, investing when they still should just be playing and experimenting. But
Well,
because it was only one game and we were up the hill and it was 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning and at 11 o'clock I was gonna be having mimosas. I was cool with it. I laughed it off. I let them have a good time, but like that spirit for the game, that youthful spirit is the same thing that you saw and appreciated at Wazoo. I mean, he just comes in and lets it rip. The coaching staff saying like, hey man, like this dude's confidence is crazy. Like at the very beginning of the season, we're just like, we don't even like this dude is a weirdo, but from the standpoint in a good way.
Yeah.
Like his love, his passion for the game. He steps on the court. He hasn't played in 3 weeks and he steps on the court like he owns it. And so that was really cool. And I was really proud of that. And I'm super, super excited for this upcoming season. We worked on some stuff this off season. He sent me a couple clips from practice of him dunking on people. And I'm just like, okay, let's go. Last year, I said, you're scared to dribble inside the 3-point line, man. What the heck? So now all this summer, all we worked on was attacking the basket. And it's gonna be a big year over there for him and for the Cougs.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to watch it. And we do enjoy watching it that much. And so this basketball family that so many in Seattle come to love. I want to talk about how the Sonics Legends Fund has helped you all out. And you and I have talked about this and done stories on this, obviously. And one thing, the first time we chatted, probably about 1.5 years ago, about this specifically, it stood out. And I know it's to you and I, it's obvious, but I think a lot of folks out there don't realize, like, of course, your dad was this star in the NBA, but the NBA in his time isn't what it was today, right?
He made more for the Seattle School District annually than he did playing in the NBA.
Right, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, and certainly given everything you guys are fighting through too, no question, your experience with the Sonics Legends Fund and how much Sandy and that whole crew has helped out you guys, but obviously some other fan favorites as well that have been in need as well.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in our situation, and when we spoke, we touched on this stuff privately before, but I wasn't really comfortable having the comment because all the legal matters and stuff that's going on. But in our situation, it came through at a really, 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 really important time. Like I can honestly say that, and not I'm gonna say if not for the Sonics Legends Fund. But I do also know that there's somebody, some way, somehow would have stepped up for us. There were other people that were talking about helping and whatever, but we're in a situation where my dad had his stroke. His wife also has mental health challenges. She has access to all of the resources, and we weren't seeing any of it at a time where he really, really needed it. And it still really bothers me, and it's still really unfortunate because it was things that we were going through that I couldn't find the consistency to get him the things that were helping him at the time that was most critical for him. But the Sonics Legends Fund came in and stepped up and gave us stability where all of this other instability was in place because of, not just his stroke, but because of those additional issues that I talked about. And just, I think it's important that I'm not quiet about it because mental health is a real thing. It's a real issue. And at the end of the day, the bottom line, it negatively impacted me. It negatively impacted my father. It negatively impacted my stepmother. And, people in this, get your paperwork together, get your retirement life plan together, whatever it is, because the conservators and, just knowing that I was arguing with somebody to pay my dad's bills that was also charging them more per month than his bills were. Then what his $7,000 a month to pay their bills? It's just like and that there was a fight, a family fight going on, but it wasn't really a fight, but they took advantage of his situation, her situation, and it negatively impacted him. And I'm still trying to pull out of it in my life because of it. But I'm proud of standing strong, standing in there for my pops, standing in there for my family. And really, where I'm at right now is like getting my business back to 100% where I can take care of my father and accomplish my own goals and dreams, get back to my life. My kids are 20 years old. My daughter's at Western Washington University playing on a basketball scholarship. My son's at Washington State University playing on a basketball scholarship. I'm 47 years old. I thought I was going to be an empty nester, start, laying some roots back down in the South, moving down that way, continuing to be here and run my business, but have a sense of freedom that I have not, had. And nobody asks for or begs for what happened. And it happens to people. But then to have it all piled on, all that extra stuff, ultimately is what took me downhill. And what I'm continuing to fight back from. But the Sonics Legends Fund, the people who helped me support my dad, the people who donated to the first GoFundMe, which they tried to claim was theirs, helped me get my kids to college. And so those things are solid now, you know what I mean? And now it's like, hey, Sonics Legends Fund in place. They're continuing to help out where needed, where non-medical covered expenses, however you want to say that, the non-insurance covered medical expenses come into play. We're doing acupuncture. They bought us a hyperbaric chamber, which has been an absolute lifesaver for him. His appetite, all of that stuff, his mood. It's something that people who have any kind of brain injury it's been beneficial for me to look into. So it's been really, really, really incredible and beneficial for our family. And I know Gus, Gus Williams, my dad was heartbroken. He called me, we sat down and we cried because of Gus's situation. And then months later, he has the same situation happen. The difference is, my dad's got family around him, and from my understanding, Gus is back in Baltimore or wherever it is, and he's just in a place and doesn't have familiarity around him. So super, super grateful for them and the greater community for their support of my family. And I'll just say, we still need help. We still need your support. Keep supporting the Sonic Legends Fund, not only for us, but these things come up, and hopefully when the green and gold return, it'll just be more of an initiative and be more of a safety net for guys and former guys that find themselves in any kind of trouble.
That was literally the next thing that was going to come out of my mouth. It sounds like it's closer than ever. The Sonics return. Who knows how that goes. We're hopefully hearing something in the next few months. But how much will that inevitable, we hope, return of the Sonics help the Legends Funds and help raise awareness of what a lot of those guys in your dad's era, but in your dad specifically, did on the court and in this community?
I mean, how much it does really depends on, the ownership group that comes in and wikis. And obviously having what their plan is for it. They've been super supportive already. So I know, and I'm assuming that that's who the ownership group's going to be. I better not get in no trouble.
Okay.
But you got 42 home games and 82 games and anything that is associated or related to the organization that they embrace is going to benefit massively from actually having a organization and having a team and having coaches and having guys and not just having a Twitter account, you know what I mean? And a dream, and a locker room, right? The support and the help and the impact will be magnified. I'm just going to make a conservative prediction and say 100 times, because it'll be top of mind for folks.
I agree with you there. I got to ask you, pure basketball, how pumped are you for that return? And what would it mean to Dad to see the Sonics back in the court?
Oh, man, it would mean everything. It would mean everything to Dad. It would mean everything to me. And, it would be super, super special. I'm going to put it in the universe right now. If their first draft pick was a Watts.
Oh, my gosh.
What?
Can you imagine?
What?
When that happens, we're replaying this clip.
Yeah, we're working. We're going to try. We're doing our part. Trust. You know, we're gonna control what we can control. We're trying to get there. That's one of his goals and his dreams. And I'll just say, like, he's been. I was really impressed with this offseason for him. You know, I asked him to, hey, when you go and you play, don't worry about winning every game and your ego and all that stuff. Like, let's win. Let's work on the things that are going to help you win next season. You know, let's get you going to the basket. Let's get you playmaking. Let's get, you know, we know you can shoot the three. So don't come home shooting the three, right? Come home working on the other things, and let's put it all together. And he's done a fantastic job of doing that. And I can't wait for you know, the state of Washington, as well as Washington State and the college basketball world to see what we've been working on.
So bring back the Sonics and draft a Watts. Sounds good to me, right?
There we go. That got a nice ring to it.
Doesn't it? Oh, my God. My guy, Donald Watts. What a thrill it was to talk to you. I know I'll see you soon in person, but we're really supportive in everything you've been fighting through. I'm glad to see you looking the way you do and talking the way you are. Just so grateful to be able to talk to you and pick your brain about everything that's going on. And of course, that Sonics Legend Fund is so special. We love talking about that, and we'll do more with them in the future. I just really appreciate your time and catching up with me, man. Thank you so much.
You appreciate it. Hey, watchbasketball.com. Get those kids signed up. Get those future Sonics in the gym.
I love it. Donald Watts, thank you.
Peace.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there, Chris. And like Donald did there, a shout out for Sandy Gregory and the Sonics Legends Fund. I know you know them very well, obviously, too. And a great organization. Check them out. They because as Donald said, you know, Slick was an NBA player, but he made more money as a teacher in Seattle schools after given NBA salaries in the 70s, right? So it's a little bit different.
It's crazy to think that, right? Given where NBA salaries are now. But, you know, Slick, I spent a lot of time with him over the years and have a lot of good memories of his smile. His smile lights up a room. And I think the Sonics Legend Fund in particular is trying to help Donald and Gus Williams as well. Yeah. And Slick as they go through all of this.
Slick may not have been the first one to wear the headband, but he made it the coolest.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Final thoughts. Where I got to find it. Here we are, right here. There we go. Final buzzer. There we go.
It for you.
Okay, there we go. Final thoughts.
Well, you know, I think we're in September now, and you and I, we talk about this every day when we're not on camera on KOMO News or on Inside the Arena. This is the time. This is when, pending that lawsuit you mentioned a little while ago, this is going to be the fall we hope is one to remember when it comes to NBA expansion. This is one where we can finally tell fans we hope that you don't have to be patient anymore. I hate to tell a fan to be patient, but I think that it's unique, and I think that by the end of the year, by the time fall turns to winter, we're going to have something a little more concrete at least. And boy, oh boy, 2025 could be a real year of anticipation. Just hang on a little bit longer, Sonics fans. Chris and I can't wait to see it. Climate pledge for an NBA game. Which we will in October, regardless.
We will in October. It's been 18 years and counting for me,
wow.
Niko. So who's counting? Just, I guess, me. Over the last 13 weeks, Bill Fesh has been right over there. He's been playing pickleball.
He lost in the pickleball tournament. He's upset, but he's still here helping us put this show together every week. We've done this now for 13 straight weeks. Kenny Mayne, Brianna Tree from Climate Pledge Arena, talking sustainability, the environment. Lenny Wilkins, the great Lenny Wilkins, UW Athletic Director Pat Shunn, WSU Athletic Director Ann McCoy, former president of Fox Sports Networks Bob Thompson, Peter Tomazawa from the Seattle World Cup Organizing Committee. You've heard from Sue Bird, Caitlin Clark. We've had a lot here that people can download, subscribe, listen to on demand. Well, if Bill won the pickleball, he would have been the best guest ever. I mean, that would have been like a Rudy story. They would have won the championship.
We would have done a whole half hour, Bill, on pickleball. Man.
Darn it.
Until next time, David Leach.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.